Hey guys, it is Sam here from NCG Northern Card Gaming. Today we are going to have a look at the Unbroken Bond set, and we're going to try and figure out what we believe is the top 10 cards from the set. We've kind of judged this on the current meta game, what we think is going to have instant impact, but we've also kind of had a little bit of a think about what sort of cards are going to affect the future as well. It's a really important thing to think about with the rotation coming up before Worlds. It's really important that we know what cards are going to impact the future of our game. Up first, we've got a few special mentions. These are cards that we think are really strong coming out of this set, but maybe at the wrong time in the meta. So, Pheromosa and Buzzwole GX, really strong Ultra Beast Pokemon, 260 HP. We've got the Jet Punch attack, which we know NOA from the Buzzwole GX card. We've then got two really strong attacks in Elegant Soul, and then Beast Game GX, which if we have an extra 7 energy, lets us take extra prize cards if we take knockouts with this attack. Alongside things like Beast Energy and things like that, and Choice Bands, that 50 damage can soon rack up a little bit, and it really makes an interesting effect on there that we can start taking extra prize cards. Lucario and Melmetal, also really strong 260 HP basic Pokemon, again with a really strong GX move that lets us reduce the damage by 30 to all of our metal Pokemon in play. Really important again that both of these cards have come out during a time where fire is also going to be huge. Both of these Pokemon are weak to fire. Personally, I don't see these holding up much, but Lucario Melmetal certainly is its own Stall archetype, Wall archetype, has more chance in my opinion. Next one is Honchkrow GX with this Ruler of the Night ability, which basically Chaos Wheel as an ability, which means our opponents can't play tools, special energy or stadiums from their hand during their turn, as long as this is the active Pokemon. I think that's a really interesting ability. Chaos Wheel we've seen before on Giratina, such a strong attack. Having it as ability is just incredible on a card, but it's very easy at the moment to get around this with Guzma and things like that. Just Guzma something else active, and then we can do all the shenanigans that this card is going to try and block. And then Whimsicott GX, again another card I really like coming out of this set. Fluffy Cotton ability. For a coin flip, we can reduce all the damage done to 0, which again really interesting, alongside a few of the Fairy Charms as well. Lightning and Ultra Beast Fairy Charms. I think this could be an interesting card, but it we'll have to see how it sets up really into the meta game. So that's why it's left as a special mention for now. Other special mentions, we've got a lot of Psychic Tech Pokemon here. We've got the Mewtwo, which is kind of a little bit like the VS Seekers, but we put it on top of our deck instead of into our hand, so we kind of have to think a turn ahead with this one. And then obviously if some kind of hand disruption, Judge or Marshadow gets played, that supporter then gets shuffled into the deck, which means we can't top deck it for next turn. Miss Magius has got a really interesting ability. If we knock it out, let our opponent take a prize card, we can then draw till we've got 7 cards in our hand. This can be really good for racing through our deck. Also pairs well with the Dusk Stone that we've got down here as well, which means we can evolve it up straight away on our first turn, and we can start using that ability straight away. So we can draw through our deck on the first couple of turns. And it might mean that we see a little bit more racing to get ourselves set up, and this card might be a big help towards that. Obviously, we've got a payoff of giving away a prize card each time, but we'll see how that goes. I think that's quite a worthy price to pay to get that draw power. Mew is a lovely little Pokemon. I love the artwork with the little island and the sea and the sand and the beach in the background, but also it is the return of Bench Barrier. Prevent all damage done to your bench Pokemon by your opponent's attacks. This is huge, guys. This stops Jet Punch powering through into our bench. This stops Pikachu and Zekrom's GX attack from powering through to our bench, Tag Bolt GX, and I think this is just really important. It also prevents things like Tapu Koko's flying flips. Means we can protect our bench a little bit more, which I think is awesome. Porygon Z here with this crazy code ability. As often as you like during your turn, you may attach special energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon. Really interesting archetypes come out with this one, of kind of a tag team GX toolbox idea. We get a couple of Porygon Z set up, and then we play all sorts of different Rainbow Energies, Unit Energies, DCEs, and Triple Acceleration Energy, and we can just pile a load of energy on and play it, and kind of play it as a bit of a toolbox, hitting the weaknesses that we want to hit. The Triple Acceleration Energy I have mentioned is down there on the bottom left here. Card can be only attached to evolution Pokemon, and we discard it at the end of our turn, but it provides 3 colourless energy. This card will really help decks such as Dugong become viable, because we can just attach, smack, and then off we go. Same with things like the Slowking. That Slowking can chop down a whole fully charged Reshiram&Charizard in one hit with the help of Triple Acceleration Energy and its Psychic Attack. So another good card to come out of this set. Fire Crystal there, it's like Energy Retrieval, but only for fire energy. So we get 3 energy cards from our discard pile back into our hand. In Blacephalon, the new Blacephalon deck, and in the Charizard Reshiram deck, this card is super important. Helps us power up Welders, things like that. Or in the Blacephalon deck, it can help us just have energy in our hand to discard and hit for huge amounts of damage. Dusto we've already touched on, then Electromagnetic Radar down there. This one might be one for the future a little bit more, but it's also super strong in Pikachu and Zekrom Lightning Box decks right now. Search your deck for 2 in any combination of a Lightning Pokemon GX and EX cards, reveal and put them into your hand. So it's kind of like Ultra Ball. We still have to discard 2. But we can search for 2 Pokemon EX and GX as long as they are Lightning type. So it's kind of like a double Ultra Ball, but for half the cost, if that makes sense. So another super strong card. Right, we're going to get into our top 10 now then. So, first one up, Lieutenant Surge's Strategy. You can only play this card if you have more prize cards remaining in your opponent. During this turn, you can play 3 supporter cards, including this card. So once you've played this, you can play 2 more. Really interesting bit of text on this is that you have to have more prizes remaining in your opponent, so you have to be behind in the game. This leads me to believe this card will be best used in stall decks. So a few cards that I've put out here are Judge, Ace Roller, Lusamine and Plumeria that I think will particularly get spammed with this card. Lusamine means that we can kind of Plumeria and then Lusamine back that Plumeria to use again next turn, or we can kind of heal and disrupt our opponent with Ace Roller and Plumeria, and there's just a few different combinations that we can go with here. We've also got the hand disruption of Judge, which is super strong as well. So I think this card mainly, for now, will be seeing a lot of play in stall decks and wall decks, but a super interesting card. Bit like Dual Brains Magazine, we can play more supporters in a turn. Persian GX is the next one up. What I really like about this card is this Catwalk ability. It is essentially its teammates as an ability. Once during your turn, if one of your Pokemon EX or GX was knocked out in your last turn, search your deck for 2 cards, put them into your hand. You can only use Catwalk once per turn, by the way, guys. So just a really important note there. But it means we can grab the cards we need to respond to those knockouts. So I've put Zoroark on the screen here. I think Zoroark, Lycanroc decks, things like that, will be where this card sees the most play. But yeah, once those Zoroarks get knocked out, we can go into our deck, we can search for the 2 cards we need, maybe an Energy, maybe a Rescue Stretcher, but whatever we need to respond next turn, we can find those cards and we can get them down. Also, really nice little Vengeance attack. Attack does 20 more damage for each Pokemon in your discard pile. So once we've started losing a few Pokemon, this is quite a nice little end game sweep that can come in, hit for potentially up to 190, because we can't add more than 180 damage in this way. So potentially 190, and then obviously we've got our modifiers, things like Choice Bands, Kikuis and other good stuff, so we can buff that damage a little bit more again. But a really strong end game attack there with the Vengeance. On to number 8, we have got this Power Plant card. So, Pokemon GX and EX in play have no abilities. Boom, we just lose it. Tapu Lele, gone, can't use Wonder Tag. Dedenne GX, can't use the ability. Zoroark, can't trade. Lycanroc, can't gust things up. Okay, I think this card is going to be huge. I've left it at number 8, partly because it's a stadium, it can get bumped fairly easily, it can get field blown away because it's not a Prism. So my worry is that passive stadiums sometimes aren't as good as they first appear, because they can get bumped very easily, they can get removed very easily. But we'll see how this one goes on. This has the huge potential to shut down Zoroark, Lycanroc as a archetype if it sees play and people play at the right times. It also means that finding supporters with Lele or just digging through our deck with Dedenne is going to be much harder. So all these really awesome GX cards we've got with abilities are just straight up shut off. So really interesting card that I think will see a lot of play. But again, I hold my reservations over it being a stadium, and quite a passive stadium at that. Down to number 7, one that is really becoming quite a big fan favourite. It was his own deck as 2 separate cards, and now we can play them together. It is the Gardevoir&Sylveon GX tag team. So it's 260 HP, basic fairy type. A couple of really nice attacks with Collider Storm that hits for 150, and we can move our energy around a little bit. And then Magical Miracle, very interesting attack. 3 fairy energy plus 3 more fairy energy, hits for 200 damage, and then we can make our opponent shuffle their hand into their deck and force them to play off some top decks. Really interesting GX attack that could shut down an opponent completely if they can't draw out of that situation. We know how bad Let Loose has been, shuffling and giving your opponent 4 cards, and people not being able to draw out of that. This is an even bigger ability where we can just force them to have no cards at all and try and top deck out of that. I think if this deck sees a lot of play, particularly that Magical Miracle GX could affect the way that people build decks. Support lines might become thicker than they already are, and I think it's going to be a really important card going into this format. 2 cards I've put here that it will see play with, I believe, are the Rubombi from Lost Thunder, which prevents us using supporters on fairy Pokemon, or prevents your opponent using supporters on fairy Pokemon, which means things like Guzma is off the table, and other things like Plumeria that might try and disrupt our energy also off the table as well. And then the other card I've put it with is this Mismagius that comes out with our Unbroken Bond set. We've already talked about this, but we can knock it out and we can draw up to 7 cards in our hand. So again, it means we can start powering through our cards, hit the supporters and items that we need, and this deck might have a real strong potential going into the format. Number 6, we've got Pokegear 3.0. So we are soon to lose Tapu Lele GX. That will go with our rotation in August. So Pokegear 3.0 coming back into the format is a really nice one, I believe. We can look at the top 7 cards of our deck, reveal a support card you find there, and put it into your hand. A few cards I've thought about uses for this. That last minute Guzma that you might need if you're playing a deck that maybe only plays 1 Lele and you've used it, or it's discarded. And we need to dig for that Guzma at the end of the game. Pokegear 3.0, that is your card to do that. Ace Roller as well. Sometimes, particularly in things like Stall archetypes, we're struggling to hit max potions, things like that, to heal ourselves off. We've got a bit of extra dig with Pokegear. We can Ace Roller. We can sort of save ourselves from giving away approved prize cards. And then also things like Cynthia. We can Pokegear, find that draw supporter we need. Maybe we've got a dead hand, but we've got Pokegear. We've got an extra out to that dead hand. So just a really important card, I think, especially losing Lele. It's going to be really important coming into the format, particularly after rotation, but I think it'll see a lot of play over the next few months anyway. Number 5, we have got this Green's Exploration card. It's a double search, but for a payoff of no abilities. So we play a deck with no abilities, things like the new Blacephalon or the new Buzzmosa deck, that's just going to play as a fairly quad archetype. We can then search for 2 trainer cards, reveal them, put them into our hand. So a few cards I've thought of, things like Duskstone to get those early turn 1 Mismagiuses, or the turn 1 Honchkrow. Really important card that we can search for there. Beast Rings, on our Beast Ring turns, we can just dig out 2 Beast Rings out of our deck for Blacephalon or Blacephalon GX. And then again, Fire Crystals, we might need to hit with a Welder. Might need to get a Welder down at some point. Got no energy left. We can dig for some Fire Crystals. We can get those energies into our hand and keep our board state rolling with Reshiram&Charizard or with Blacephalon decks again. But I think this will open up the door for a huge number of quad type builds, particularly with maybe more Ultra Beast focused. But for the payoff of no abilities, that might not be such a bad thing. Down to number 4, we have got the aforementioned Blacephalon. I'd have loved to have put this higher, but I'm really worried about how this deck's going to play with things like Let Loose and other hand disruption cards around. I think it might be really strong for now, even with those cards, but then once we get Reset Stamp dropping for our Worlds format, this might just completely go off the table. So once rotation's gone and we've got Reset Stamp and other things like that, I do worry that Blacephalon might just disappear off the face of the earth, as it has appeared to have done in Japan in the recent format over there. So the deck wants to play off Welders to charge up. We play Wishful Battens, try and keep the energy on board, and then we have a number of cards like Fire Crystal and Fiery Flints to dig around, get our energies, and hit for a big Fireball Circus attack, which does discard any number of fire energy from your hand. Then the attack does 50 damage for each card you discard that way. So we can hit some big damage fairly quickly. So some of the big tag team GXs that have got up to 300 HP, we can hit that just by binning off 6 fire energies from our hand, which with the likes of Fire Crystal and Fiery Flints and other cards like that, hopefully shouldn't be too much of a problem. Down to number 3, we have got the Welder card that's been previously mentioned. Fire is going to be a huge type, especially with the release of Unbroken Bonds. It's going to be huge over the next format, or the next few weeks. Reshiram&Charizard is probably going to be the biggest card in our, or the biggest archetype in our format. Certainly looks that way over in Japan with the recent tournament, where it just absolutely flooded the day 2 and the top 64, and it was by far the most dominant archetype. So Welder is going to be a huge card. Welder helps us charge up for things like Flare Strike to hit for a massive 230 damage, or to help us charge up our Double Blaze GX and hit for even more damage, up to a potential of 300 before we then add in modifiers. Again, Blacephalon we just talked about, but we want to be hitting big damage off the Fireball Circus. So with our turn attachment and then our Welder, we can then get the 3 energy on board required to hit Fireball Circus. And also a little adage to this card is we can attach up to 2 fire energy, but then we get to draw 3 cards as well. So we're not losing the fact that, unlike where Blacksmith previously you could attach 2 energy from your discard pile, that was your support for turn. You didn't have the option of draw support and things like that. Whereas at least with Welder, you get to draw those three extra cards, and you get to see a little bit more of your deck. On to number 2, we've got our Dedenne GX with this Dedenne Change ability. It's kind of a throwback to the old Shaman EX from Roaring Skies, combined with Professor Sycamore a little bit more, because we have to discard and draw rather than just draw until we've got 6 in our hand. It also means we can start, again, a bit like Miss Magius, we can start powering through our decks a little bit more, or just get ourselves out of a bit of a bad spot. It's a searchable out to draw in a whole fresh new hand, without needing to find Lele's and things like that. It also means we can sort of draw and just big up our hand a little bit more without playing a supporter, so we can kind of Guzma, then draw to 6 new cards as well if we need the extra out to an energy or something like that. So it's a bit of like a cross between Shaman and Professor Sycamore, which is lovely, and also has a really nice GX attack that, although it only does 50 damage, it also causes instant paralysis, and we can get that Dedenne back into our hand to use again on the following turn. And then finally, at number 1, we've got the big Reshiram&Charizard. As I've already mentioned, I think this is going to be the biggest deck in format coming up over the next few weeks, over the next few months, and then maybe even after rotation as well. For now, we've got the key our way to power it up turn 1, so we can start hitting for that big 230 straight away. A little bit like we used to get away with the old Ho-Oh Salazzle builds when Burning Shadow was first released. Talking on that, we've also got this Salazzle GX card that's still in format with the big Diabolical Claws attack that can hit some big damage once we start taking some prize cards and close out the game for us. Welder's going to be a really useful card for keeping this card moving as well. And then we've also got the Salazzle, the new Salazzle from the Unbroken Bond set. That is Heat Factory, but has an ability. So we have loads and loads of room to draw with this card as well. Once we've used Welders and drawn some cards, or we can discard some Fires and use Roast Reveal abilities or Heat Factory Prism Star abilities just to get some of those cards out of our deck as well. Which means I think this deck is just going to be fast, steamroll through a lot of other archetypes, which I think is just insane. So yeah, there you have it. That is our top 10. Reshiram&Charizard for me will be the next best deck in format. Well, certainly the most played deck in format, but excellent. There we go. Thank you very much for listening, guys. Have a really awesome Easter weekend, Maybank holiday weekend. Sorry, and we will be back with a few videos looking at some of these archetypes once we have got them built and tested, probably after Bristol Regionals this weekend. So thank you very much for listening. I've been Sam with NCG, and we'll see you next time. Bye.